Hello, and I want to say good morning, guys. Welcome back to the improvement season. Whenever you're listening to that, it can be in the nighttime as well. So it's me, Pascal Fuller, once again, and on the other side it is Steve. And both of us not only do our menstrual cycles align, our mesocycles align, but it seems like our catching a cold and being actually very sick is aligned as well. I only caught a cold. Steve, I don't know what he has. Maybe, I don't know, some diarrhea along with anything else. But yeah, how are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, not that well. It's very odd because it's like, I think I don't know if you didn't come back to me on this actually, but I think I had said to you a couple of, like maybe a few weeks ago that I was like, I'm surprised how fatigued I feel.
That was it. When you decided to actually, instead of cutting, now go for another bout of mossing, and after that prana phase you took there, I was feeling oddly fatigued, like I needed a coffee to get through the day, like through the morning. It just wouldn't have worked. And I've had this, like the listeners know, this very limited appetite / actually to the point of nausea if I try and eat the wrong thing or too much, like the wrong thing, something that's just not appetizing or too much. And this week it all just multiplied itself by like doubled basically. So my appetite is 0 and fatigue was super high. Monday I just tried to grit through it, and I stupidly did, and that probably bit me right in the ass. So yeah, since Tuesday, Wednesday, now it's Friday, I've not been back to the gym, and booked an emergency GP appointment, which I'm really glad you can actually get that done, although they were none the wiser and just said, we're going to get, I can't remember, I've got the blood test, but there's a ton of things they're testing for, like even thyroid and so everything. It will get back, come back in like a week or so, right?
Well, I don't get to have the blood test until a week.
Oh, I thought you took the blood test already.
It's so frustrating. You'd think that's logical, right? Like you're in there, it can't take that much. I don't know, but they take some blood. Come on, I don't know. It doesn't take that much time or effort. But yeah, I booked in for next Friday. So I've got a week to...
And then it could be over and you never know what it was actually, right? Which is, I mean, in hindsight, it doesn't really matter unless it's something more severe or so that comes and goes, but hopefully it's not.
Yeah, I hope not. The only thing that made me think it could still be around, or at least to some extent, is because I've had it like the slight like nauseous, and because I just taken it as like, oh, this is just when you mass and you're like at peak mass, this is just comes with the territory, but it's pretty bad. So I don't know if there could be something underlying there. I don't know. It could be gastrointestinal, something like that. We'll have to see. I really don't hope that you are truly overtrained, because I do remember the time when my old roomie, I probably mentioned that at some point, he's a high level runner, so 800 meters and 1,500 meters. And he had a time in his career where he was diagnosed with being overtrained because he really pushed it hard. He wanted to qualify for German national cups, right? To take a place there, and he just dug himself into the ground on weeks on end, and he was like out for a long time. Damn. Where it was just like that lethargic feeling all the time. He was chronically ill, and yeah, brain fog, stuff like that, right? And I'm hoping
that then carried over to other sicknesses because your immune system is in the ground or down the drain as well, and stuff like that. So hopefully it's not that case, because I know that you really pushed it hard.
Yeah,
over a long time.
Yeah. I hope it's not that as well, because you always think, oh, overtraining. It's not a myth, but it's like you have to go out of your way to really do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I always train hard, but I always think like, I don't know, push my body to its limit. If I actually exceeded that, I don't know, maybe let's I don't want to.
I mean, it's just assumptions right now, and throwing around with assumptions is like Googling your symptoms. It doesn't help, and it just makes your mind go wild.
Yeah, actually, it's really bad. Actually, I would say I'm a hypochondriac. Just in general, I overthink every detail in life. Anything you think about, I will overthink it. And normally it's like me being a bit, not negative, but like cautious, and like I worry. I'm a warrior. I imagine you're not, Pascal. I imagine you're pretty chilled.
Yeah. I mean, funny enough that you bring it up, because here today, maybe also just due to the environment and the state you're in, everything seems a little bit more dark, and you are just thinking more pessimistic thoughts. And when then, so I just went over the YouTube comments, right? And there was one guy saying like, I don't even know what Pascal is doing on the Improvement Season podcast. What's the reason for that, right? It's just like, when you, on days like these, read stuff like this, right? You're just a human being, and you can't help it to then be like a little bit down and disappointed about it, because we are doing these kind of things to actually just put out content and help people to the best of our abilities. So that doesn't mean that we're always right, that the things that we are doing is like appealing to everyone, that people always should love us or admire us or anything like that, right? But if you then see something like this, it sticks with you, and that makes you question a lot of things. Like, okay, am I actually doing the right thing? Is there something to it? Have I acted inappropriately? What are my clients thinking? And in regards to longevity, like, okay, for future perspectives, how can you secure your future and your outcome and stuff like that, right? And just this small ignition is already causing, like, I don't know, like a domino effect, right?
I think,
I have days like these, so I'm just human as well.
When you care about what you're doing, like, it's inevitable that you end up feeling that way. I'm surprised I haven't seen that comment. I look over every comment. I didn't see that.
I didn't see that at first as well, and I was a little bit slacking when it comes to answering the YouTube comments. I think it was from a week ago and stuff. I just looked over it, right, and I was just like, that's actually quite disappointing, to be honest, right? I'm a human being. I can't help but to then look over a comment like this and be like, hey, this is not nice. And I know that being upfront, being honest about things is a good thing, right? And maybe I'm just right now in a negative state where I interpret too much into that comment. But I can't even fathom how it must be for people who are truly like in the limelight, where it's just like, so many people do have something negative to say about you, whereas they don't even know you. Right? And that must be so psychologically demanding for true VIPs and stars to actually deal with that, because we always talk about that the positive things are always masked by the negative things most of the time, right? And that must no wonder why there's a Club 27 and they take so many drugs, so much alcohol, and then they pass away, because I think it must be so hard for someone, like, you can't even go out or walk out on the street without someone actually approaching you. And then when it's then even negative, that must be like, I didn't even do anything against you or offend you, right? And you're coming to me and act that negatively. That must be very, very tough, right?
Yeah, I can see that. Like, I can't even imagine. It makes me think of, just because this links a little bit to it, but this week, it was a big test, actually, because we've got Ada now, who some of the listeners might know. We got a rescue dog over the weekend, and she has been...
she's a rescue dog?
Yes.
So it is for emergencies when something is going wrong at home.
No, like she needed rescuing, so she was in a foster home. So we adopted her from. She'd be useless for that sort of thing.
Yeah, I thought like a terrier, like a rescue dog.
So yeah, Patterdale Cross Jack Russell Terrier, and she is very excitable, and she's just been absolutely all over the place. But one of the nights, I had booked this ages ago. I don't think you know Ant Middleton, SAS Who Dares Wins. No. You'd probably love it, to be honest. Okay. I reckon our English listeners, at least, who have watched that program, I don't know if it's on Netflix, but you'll probably find it online. He's like the main guy in that. It's all about, like, obviously the SAS and mindset and everything. But we booked tickets to go see him on Wednesday. So yeah, we left Ada for like 4 hours on her own in this crate, and we were just like, oh, she could be barking the entire time. We felt so bad. But anyway, he, in his presentation, it was really cool, actually. It was like at the London Palladium, and it was like it was really cool. He's a great guy. And he was just talking about like knowing yourself, essentially. And when you know yourself, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you're just honest. Like, you're gold, because people can tell you that you're shit at something and you can be like, I know, or they can say something, they can say anything. You're just like, because you know yourself. So even if, I don't know, for example, someone say you can't do that, but you know yourself well enough to know you can do it. You don't even need to take that. Like, I don't care what you say because I know I can do it. So I like that. Did
he actually touch on the fact about imposter syndrome? Maybe because it just makes me think about that comment, for example, right? Where it's just like, yeah, actually, you got a point. What am I even doing here, right? I'm not like an expert such as, I don't know, someone who's conducting research, who's coming on a podcast talking about the research, who's an expert in a certain field, who can actually give out very, very good information. I'm just someone who's collecting the information as well and actually putting it out there, right? I'm basically just what's it called? Just a parrot. I'm repeating the things that I'm picking up somewhere, right? And he got a point. And in that sense, like, okay, I do know myself, but he's somewhat right? And this is where then the doubts creep into your mind, because it's not fully incorrect what he's saying there.
Yeah, I think that makes me think, your weakness and my weakness as well is we're not researchers. We don't know things inside out. We don't know how to interpret research perfectly, these sort of things. But we have to remember our strengths as well. One being communication. A lot of these scientists, they either would struggle to communicate it to an audience or don't have the time or the know-how to do so. And they can't actually gather an audience like we have. We've got Revive Stronger and the people watching and listening to us. Like, we've managed to actually use our skills at, I don't know, being marketable, and being personable, and coaches as well. Those are some of the skills that we have, because it makes me, what he did say is, at the beginning, he was like, I'm not a bookworm. I've read 2 books in my life. And he was like, they're the 2 books I've written. And he's like, I've just been through life. My knowledge is through experience. So everything I say here is just through living life.
Yeah, I think, and this is something that we've talked about in the past as well, especially when we got someone like John Meadows on the podcast, I'm always very appreciative of these people who have tons of experience, because this is something that you can't learn in books and stuff like that. And it is also holds true to people who are just like masters in their craft. So for example, my one bike is a Harley Davidson 48 Sportster as well. There's one guy in Berlin who's called the HD doctor, so the Harley Davidson doctor. And he's doing that since 35 years. And he has seen it all, right? And if there's a problem, you're going to him, right? And you know that he didn't study that, because there is no course to study that. It comes all through experience. And I think that, especially because what we are doing is also where experience just trumps everything, in my opinion. This is something that can be positive. So yeah,
especially when we consider the scientific literature specifically on our audience and on us is so sparing.
Yeah.
There's so much experience that can really help with that. So yeah, I think that was a good discussion. I don't think anything else exciting in my week, unfortunately, has happened. But
neither mine.
Serious Mass by Optimum Nutrition is helping me hit, I'm struggling to consume 2,000 calories, which sounds, for some people, they're like, that's like my maintenance. But for me, that's like a huge deficit. I'm a little bit concerned that I'm going to have lost 5 pounds or more this just few days.
Yeah. And you're just waiting for the sponsorship from Optimum Nutrition.
Oh no. Now. And I probably shouldn't even say too much about Optimum Nutrition, to be honest. I have also been using De Novo, obviously. But weirdly, I can't do it with milk. That makes me feel particularly queasy.
You still got 2 tubes of whey sitting at your home, right?
Yeah, I think there's from Anna. Yeah,
from last year, December. I always think weekend. I don't think that I will have the space for that.
They're going to go.
Because I'm flying with Ryanair at this time. So, yeah. The luggage that you can bring is not very, very much.
No.
So, yeah. But anyway, yeah, let's delve into questions.
I was only going to ask how Tony was.
Tony is fine. Yeah, he's growing. The mossing phase is going very well. He's just, I don't know. Everything has just changed in my life ever since Katie got in my life. Especially because Hugh was around. Already mentioned that a couple of times, but especially now with Tony around as well. The perspective on what is important, the priorities in life it just completely changed. Also, I was always considering taking steroids at some point, right? In the future and stuff. So I was definitely not turned down by the thought of actually going on steroids in the future. But now with a kid or with 2 kids around, I want to be around for as long as possible. And if there's even the slightest chance of steroids actually cutting some years off my life, I don't want to risk it, because I don't want to. I want to grow old with Katie. I don't know, until the 80s, maybe hopefully 90s or so, right? Still be fresh and fully functioning, right? Not someone who's just like sitting in a wheelchair and can't even do anything at all anymore. That's not really, I don't know. I can see it in Katie's grandma. She's someone like that, right? She's forgetting everything. She's always asking the same things, and it's devastating for the people around, right? But anyway, I want to live a long life together with Katie, grow old with her, and see our children grow up as well, and maybe start a family themselves as well. So things have completely changed in such a short period of time, and I just enjoy every single minute I can spend with Tony and also with Hugo. But there's also something. It's hard to admit. And Katie and I just talked about it just recently, because she was asking me, like, do you love Tony differently than Hugo? And I have to admit it. Yes, sure. Right. Because I'm first and foremost experiencing everything from the start, hopefully kind of to the end of my life. And with Hugo, it wasn't like this, right? I got to know him when he was 1.5 years old, and I didn't experience these kind of things before. But yeah, I tried. Also, I'm still loving him, but in a different way. And this is something that I just have to face and admit. But that doesn't mean that I can't love him to a very high extent.
Yeah, I think that's natural, and I think normal, and I think anyone who would say differently is probably lying to themselves as well, just because it's blood, and like you said, seeing him and seeing Katie give birth and knowing that you were a part of that, it's impossible not to feel that way. And the good thing is you will still treat Hugo like equally. It's just you can't necessarily control how you feel in that way.
Yeah, and once again, sorry about the in-depth baby talk. I know that people weren't really that fond of that, but it's just like a massive part of my life at the moment. But so everything is going very well on that end.
No sleep disruption?
Not really. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, but it's more because Hugh is screaming, like, "Mama!" And then I get up.
Is your tool self-therapy, or like they scream themselves to sleep, or do you have to go in and see them?
Oh, yeah. We go over and see them, because I think when it comes to that self-therapy, children need the protection. We are responsible for actually caring for them, protecting them, because they can't take care of that themselves at the moment, right? And I don't think, so I'm very skeptical in the benefits of actually letting them deal with that themselves. That doesn't mean when there is an issue, like an irrational issue, that we sit down and talk with them about it. But in the middle of the night, he gets out, and normally you've always been around, like cavemen. Let's just put it that way, like cavemen. They've always been beside their child because they couldn't take care for themselves, and they needed to be at the side, because otherwise a bear would come around, I don't know, a saber-toothed tiger would come around and rip the child off of them, right? And now that we have the luxury of having separated rooms, that doesn't mean that we should just leave them to it. I don't think that this is the right way to go about it, but this is only my opinion. With Katie having her masters and I feel like this, I do trust her on that one as well.
That is very fortunate, actually. That makes nothing like having an expert to calm your worries about these sort of things. So, and she's got experience as well with Hugo, so that's awesome.
Totally.
We almost tried the self-therapy with Ada that night, but she barked for, I think, it ended up being 3 hours that we were awake because of her, but she barked probably for a whole hour before Charlotte came in and decided to sleep with her. So, but not since. She's been fine the last nights.
I mean, the older they grow, the more they can take care of themselves and also realize that you are still around. But yeah, in the early years, I think it's important for them to show your presence and that you are always protecting them.
I think the listeners are going to find this out, but I keep comparing Ada to your children. And I feel like a parent now in a very strange way. I know it's not a fair comparison. Like I said, I can put her on a leash and in a crate.
And my children aren't pooping on the floor, but I mean, that could always happen if they aren't wearing any kind of diapers, right? You're not putting diapers on Ada.
No, we're not. So, thankfully, no poo in the flat, but she did wee on the bed, which wasn't fun. It smells so
this is
bad. Something
that we have alike then.
Okay, cool. I think we can probably do questions now.
Yeah, so the first one was from Sophia, which is not it was a question, but we can't really answer that. So just to read it out loudly, because she did an effort to actually ask that question. What did you mean with, in quotation marks, being a female? How would this be different for women? So I don't know what this is referring to. That was probably something we talked about in the past, but unfortunately I don't know what it's referring to.
No,
so
I'm not sure. I can only think she wants to know the differences between males and females.
Yeah,
which we've probably covered.
Yeah, and sometimes just to give a little bit of value here, Sophia, when it comes to scientific research, unfortunately, so often research is being conducted on males only, and there is just a lack of evidence when it comes to females, and when it comes especially to resistance training and females. So many things are very much unclear whether this holds true for females as well as it is for males. So this is why we are then saying sometimes, okay, we don't know how it is for females or so.
Yeah,
cool. So the next one, we don't have many questions left actually. So Mike Fields, what are your thoughts on liposuction to get rid? Oh, we had that one. So maybe he asked again.
Like impatient. I don't blame him.
So Padrem. Programming a mesocycle in which you set progression by intensity on squat and by volume on bench. Is it a bad idea, or is it better to progress with only one variable for mesocycle, for example, progression on both exercises by intensity and then in another mesocycle by volume on both? Thanks, guys.
Interesting question. So this actually is good because it relates to a post that I recently did, which was, we kind of had called it quadruple progression before, I think, on the podcast, and then we renamed it, well, I renamed it rather, to autoregulated progression, because I felt like that was quite appropriate for it, because it essentially in that way is allowing you to pick your poison in terms of progression based on how you are recovering and how you're doing. And essentially had a 4-step process where you would start your mesocycle at minimum effective volumes. So for the sake of argument, like 8 to 10 sets or something along those lines. And then minimum effective intensities, relative intensities, or like workable, efficient ones, like 3 to 4. So you'd start there, and then you would auto-regulate based on your recovery, based on your kind of progression, and based on various factors like that, like biofeedback. And the first one was, I think I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it's essentially, can you use an increase in load and match reps from last week, allowing RAR to come down by an appropriate level, so like down by 1. So if it was 3 to 4, then it was 3 to 2 maybe. Or if you can't beat the like increased load, can you get an extra rep? So again, you might be able to do that. On compound movements, it might be fine to increase load. On isolation, like dumbbell movements, maybe you just want to get an extra rep. And then the final step was, are you like well recovered between sessions, or are you going to sessions with any lagging soreness? And is your performance really good? If your performance is good and you're recovering between sessions, then you could potentially add a set. And that's the way to, like, I would say is a great kind of rough model for auto-regulating progression through a hypertrophy mesocycle. Relating to his question, I always assume hypertrophy when people ask, because he said he didn't mention which it was. But when we're talking about strength, then intensity is certainly king, and you definitely want to be progressing via that modality, not really volume so much. That might come as a consequence when we're talking about set numbers, probably not increasing set numbers through a strength phase particularly, more so just prioritize the intensity and making sure you're very well recovered between sessions is quite important so you can perform with those heavy loads. So then I would bias volume progressions generally in a hypertrophy phase, but that doesn't mean you can't also, as I mentioned with the autoregulated progression, increase intensity. And arguably intensity is an easier progression because it's much less. Like adding just a bit of weight is less than adding a whole additional set in terms of stressors. So I would say don't kind of pigeonhole yourself in picking either volume or intensity or whatever it might be, and maybe have a look at various modalities that you could progress within and see how far you can take it. And with hypertrophy, in the short term, volume is the biggest kind of driver for progressive hypertrophy from what we know at the moment. So if you can add a set, I would definitely look to do that. But if you can also, you could probably also add a rep or some intensity, so long as you're moving from a lower relative intensity to a higher one, or sorry, a higher relative intensity to a lower one. So like 3 to 4 to like failure over a number of weeks. That's probably how I'd suggest it.
That was very good.
Oh,
very
good.
good summarization of also the autoregulative progression model. I have really nothing to add there.
Oh.
It was very good. So moving on to the second to last question here. Pete Dawson, stimulant cycling. Obviously, it's optimal to take a break from caffeine once in a while to resensitize. But what if stim-free days just aren't in the cards because of labor-intensive career, lack of willpower, and caloric deficit, etc.? What if you did 1 week of ephedrine, then a week of, let's say, 1.3 DMAA, then a week of cocaine? Well, kidding on the last one. But theoretically, yeah, I think theoretically it's a good example, actually. What would be the pros and cons of an approach like this?
Pascal, this sounds like your area of expertise with cocaine.
So first and foremost, when it comes to the resensitization of caffeine, I'm still not 100% convinced that there is a resensitization effect going on. Yes, when we haven't drank something like caffeine, for example, or consumed caffeine for a very long time, we do get a pretty severe effect, or at least we feel it, right? Sometimes the palms are getting sweaty, your heart rate is going up and stuff like that. But so when I drop caffeine or coffee intake for just a week, because I don't know, I've been on holiday or so, and there was simply just like filtered coffee, which is I mean, it can be good, but not when it comes out of a machine or anything like that, right? So when it comes to this, it could very well be that I'm then coming back home and it's like it has always been before. So, but I also know the effects of you have been off of caffeine for a very long time, and then you're coming back, palms are getting sweaty, heartbeat is going up there, but I'm not entirely certain how the effects of caffeine are then impacted also by this resensitization effect. That being said, also when it comes to training, when you want to have a stimulant to enhance your performance, and especially you're using caffeine to enhance your performance, you actually need to increase or have a very high intake of caffeine to actually see a enhancement in your performance, at least from the scientific literature. What I'm always doing is I take a pre-workout, but it just makes me awake. That doesn't mean that it truly benefits or enhances my performance per se, right? And once again, from the scientific literature, you need to actually consume quite a lot of caffeine in one go to actually see an enhancement in performance. That being said, when it then comes to days where when it's not in the cards and you are taking it chronically, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Due to personal preferences, I'm I just used to drink my coffee each and every single day. I just like it, right? It's my personal preference. I don't think that there is anything inherently wrong with that. Sure, when you always compare that to not taking anything at all, maybe there is, right? But so far, I don't think that there is a long-term study on that one where it's really like in-depthly looked at over years on end what long-term consumption of 1 cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee per day is doing. But if I'm wrong, feel free to actually get back to me. I'm more than happy to actually change my stance on that one. When then comes to cycling stimulants, I think that the theoretical example there is of course severe, but I would think that it's probably not a good idea just due to the effects of maybe your heart health, so the cardiovascular health. But am I really convinced that it's super detrimental? I can't say that I am, but just if I think about it, I would assume that it's not the best idea. But I couldn't really tell you, right, from any kind of evidence or so. It's just my gut feeling that tells me that it wouldn't be the best to take ephedrine, then DMAA, and then go over to cocaine, and then cycle back again. I just have a gut feeling that this may not be the best thing, but it could very well be that I'm completely wrong here as well.
I think you'd probably see more people doing it if it was a good thing, I think. I imagine there'd be like...
I think it's more like a legal thing, and possibly people are being also afraid of it, because ephedrine, as far as I know, is not legal here in Germany at least.
It's not legal,
and cocaine as well. So yeah, taking that on a consistent basis would also be quite expensive, because I know from back in the days that 1 gram of cocaine is like $50. So yeah, it would be very expensive after a while, and also quite addictive.
Although pre-workout is quite expensive, so sometimes. Yeah. No, I thought that was well explained. I think it's not something we have long-term data on. And I actually wanted to, in the literature, what we've seen from caffeine having an ergogenic benefit, is 3 to 4 milligrams per kg, isn't it? I think that's what it is.
You mean 300 milligram?
3 to 4 milligrams per kilogram. Oh no!
Yeah. So it's right around. I think it's even higher, if I remember correctly. So the first things do start to show itself at 300 milligrams, but I think a true performance enhancement you first see at 500 to 600 milligrams of an intake. Sure, I mean, it's better to actually count by body weight, because that's more precise and more individual. But yeah, it is very, very high actually.
But yeah, for someone who, like, this is a big person, 100 kilograms, but that's quite a lot of caffeine to be having. But yeah, it might even be, maybe it's even 5 to 6. I can't remember. It's high. Like, it's a lot. Yeah. It's not like a black coffee for most people. That's not going to have.
I think like a black coffee, what is it? 200 milligrams or so?
If that,
I think like an espresso, double espresso is like 150 milligrams or so, double espresso, right? And if you then think about you needing to consume like 500 to 600 milligrams to see a performance enhancement, that would mean you have to consume like 4 double espressos in one sitting, and I'm drinking like 2 to 3 across the entire day. All right. That's a lot. Yeah, it's very much a lot in one sitting.
My concern would be, because I've posted about this before in terms of caffeine consumption, and I think it might be 2 milligrams per kilogram is like the recommended limit for good sleep quality. So as soon as you start thinking, okay, so even if it is, I think it might be higher than the 3 to 4, but that's higher than the 2 for sleep quality. So if you are going much higher than that, and you're including like ephedrine, and you're including things like this, I only imagine that's going to screw your sleep over hugely. And I would say sleep is going to trump having that. So I think I just wanted to say that as well. Yeah.
So totally agree. I think the benefits that you're getting out of the performance enhancement are definitely counteracted by the lack of sleep, and sleep has probably a much higher impact on the overall outcome.
Yeah, and I think in maths they looked at caffeine, and I think it was concluded in one of them at least that you could have like a low dose of caffeine all the time, and you don't like become desensitized to then when you decide to boost up to the ergogenic amount. So for me, I generally do like a low steady dose of like a cup of coffee a day or something, and then when I'm really feeling I need it, so that might be like overreaching weeks, or it might be just if I'm dieting days when I feel really hungry and lethargic, I'll increase it on those days, but not try and avoid chronic high caffeine consumption, because again, like we've said, I think it just kill your sleep. Sweet.
Yeah. So the last one is another question as well. It's from Tibor, and he just said, like, not a question, but you got the pronunciation of my name correct. Guys, it's Hungarian, and I'm not the guy who got a conversation about the study earlier. All best, Tibor. So that's about it for all the questions.
Oh, wow.
We finally got through them all. So now is the time we could actually ask for more questions. So if you have some questions you want to pass by us and not wait for 3 months to get answered, and now is the time actually. And with that, what is supposed to talk about now?
Well,
Steve?
I was going to say we decided on a new format to get the questions, didn't we? So we realized this might not be. It's easy for us, but I imagine it's kind of frustrating for the listeners to sometimes not know when their question's getting answered and there to be a big delay there. So we've decided if you want to ask questions, we do it like we do for the Q&As with like Mike or whoever else might be coming on. And we're going to ask for questions each week, new questions in our Facebook group. So then you know if your question's going to get answered, it's probably going to be that week. And we'll get through as many of the questions we can. We can't guarantee to get through all of them. And if they get missed, then you have to ask them the next week, and we'll try and get to them then, so that at least there's some kind of, I guess also it's a little bit more exciting knowing that your question could be answered this coming week.
So basically we are always asking on a weekly basis for questions for the upcoming episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in on that and join our Facebook group, which it just keeps growing, and there's great people in there, really smart people, really cool discussions.
We are right now, and this is something I just accidentally noticed, at 4.4k members, which is very cool, because we are asking questions, like entry questions for people to actually get into the group. We don't accept everyone, because we want to actually have that group's quality as high as possible. And 4.4 with asking entry questions, this is actually very, very cool. Very, very high.
I don't know how many I did this mistake, and actually this is a bit of advice for anyone who is starting up their like social media profile or business, is don't just add and invite every single person you know, because that's what I initially did. And like on Instagram, I think my first 5,000 followers were just like spam bots, because I would just follow people and unfollow people and it'd just be useless. And then same with like, I get PTs trying to like invite me to their page and stuff. And I'm like, but I'm a PT. I'm not like your audience. Invite like, I don't know, some people who are actually your target audience. So yeah, I think there's probably some not so great, many like some people in there who just maybe shouldn't be in there, but the majority of people, like probably 3,000 plus, are like high quality people who really want to learn. So that's exciting. So, and on that note, do answer the questions if you want to get in the group, because if you don't answer them, we will not accept you. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. You're not going to get accepted.
Yeah, but other than that, I have actually not really much to talk about. Nothing really exciting is going on in my life, and nothing that really stuck with me just recently in regards to any kind of topic that came up. I think what's in the trenches at the moment is effective reps, because Mike has talked about it on one of our podcasts, and just quickly after Greg Knuckles, 2 episodes. Quickly or shortly after, Greg Knuckles has released an episode, a blog article about it, was also on a podcast now where they talked about it. So I think everything has been discussed on that end, and I think that with Mike and Greg, they can talk so much better about these things, because they have so much more knowledge about the insight into studies and stuff. So yeah, that
seems to be the most exciting thing. I don't think there's anything necessarily else going on. Actually, something I was going to bring it up earlier was because obviously when I've been ill and I've been sharing that, I've had so much advice from people, and it's funny because I went to Dr. Mike. He's Dr. Mike II, I think, on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's a really nice guy. I don't know if you've ever spoken to him, Pascal.
No, never.
You really like him.
Not that I know of. It could very well be that I did, and now I'm putting myself out here. And
he's a super nice guy, and he's a GP. So I just like told him my symptoms, and he was like, and I think this is what the action, like the quote is for personal trainers as well. Like the first thing to do is do no harm. Like we just have to make sure we're not making things worse by doing anything. So that's what he was very careful to me with. He was like, "You've told me your symptoms, but I don't want to make anything worse by suggesting anything. So from what I've told you, I would go and get a blood test." And so I went to the GP anyway, and they did this. They suggested the same as him. I don't know where I was going with this, but yeah. So people were giving me advice on like my illness and what to do. So many different people like telling me loads of different things that was worked for them, and it's like, who are you to tell me this now?
Yeah. And he's a GP who's then actually telling you, "Oh no, I don't want to give you any kind of advice.
Yeah.
Go and the only advice I can give you is actually get some bloods done." It's funny because today I saw a meme about climate change. I think Patrick actually posted it. So Patrick Barney, shout out to him, posted it. Whereas on the top there were researchers, and researchers are agreeing that climate change is happening and human induced, right? Whereas down below was a guy with a fish, and it said like, okay, this guy has his profile pic from as a truck and denies that climate change is happening. Who's more credible to trust? Right? So it's just so funny because it holds true to so many debates out there that also, I don't know, vaccination and stuff like that, right? So many people do agree like, okay, yes, do vaccine your kids because X, Y, Z. And you can't tell me that every single doctor is bought by pharma companies. It's not feasible. If you really think about it, that would cost a pharma company more money to keep every mouth shut than actually producing a good product, which does actually help, right? It's this conspiracy theory there once again, right? It's just because Hugo's biological father, he's someone who's falling for this, and he was also against like vaccination because of this, and fluoride for teeth, because yes, every dentist is bought by those companies, where it's just like, that doesn't even make sense. Think about it. Someone, if that's really true, some of the dentists will talk. You can't keep every mouth shut. It's impossible, right? Especially when you try to do it with every dentist in the world. And the same holds true for every scientist, every doctor. Not everyone is bald, right? And it simply doesn't make sense. And there it is as well with the climate change. And you getting like advice from people saying there that the people who aren't experts are giving you advice, and those who are more like on the side of cautious when it comes to these things.
I'd say I appreciate the advice. It's just
totally
what I'm trying to tell the listeners is, when people do give you advice who aren't expert in that area, just take it with a pinch of salt, because you don't want to start doing something dangerous.
I mean, and sometimes that advice is actually turning out to be good advice, right? In the sense of like, thank you very much. I've tried it and it very much helped, right? But it's not always the case. And don't do anything stupid then, because it's about your health, especially when it may be a little bit more severe.
It was one bit of advice that I asked for a bunch of research to it, because I was like, I want to know, like, where are you even getting this? And unfortunately, and I don't expect to listen to this, but if he does, then I don't know what to say. But I'm not saying anything particularly negative, I don't think, because he could tell I was very suspicious of what he was saying. But he was essentially saying that I should fast, because fasting will beat the cold sooner, because you're not hungry because the body doesn't want you to eat, which, I mean, I see, like, it feels correct for that to be true, but I'm not sure that is true. And then also he said, because when you fast, human growth hormone will spike, and therefore you won't lose any muscle, and actually you don't need to worry about having protein. And I was like,
the fasting and human growth hormone.
This is the thing. Really? I've heard this a few times, and I was just like, can I have some studies on this? And I didn't really get any studies. I got kind of YouTubers who potentially reference studies, but like, I don't, again, trust that. I'd have to look into them. I don't know if you know anything about this, Pascal.
The thing is, when it comes to these kind of, I don't know, recommendations, suggestions, the intention is good.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle Fondero once did a post about this, that someone was throwing around suggestions and recommendations when it comes to gut health, which were completely not correct and could even be detrimental and harmful for people, right? And you have to realize that certain intentions, even though that it comes from a good place, are not very much good. And that's why I think it's totally all right to then sometimes even call them out or to challenge them, or maybe just, I don't know, ignore them. But someone else who is now recommending some homeopathic herbs or so to actually fight cancer instead of going for chemotherapy, the intention is good as well, but it could possibly be detrimental and harmful as well, right? And there it is. There is lying the underlying issue. And this is what Gabrielle Fondero actually then made a post about, that intentions may be good, but this is something that we simply shouldn't just take for granted and accept and be like, yeah, but his intentions were good, so he's safe. No, we still have to then challenge them or even call them out, because it could possibly be detrimental in certain situations. Not always the case. If someone is suggesting like take GDAs, it's probably not as harmful, right? But if it's something like the example I brought up, someone like saying, okay, no, you only need that green tea to get rid of your cancer, right? So
yeah, I've heard scary stuff along those lines, and it is really hard when someone, I always think of this. I see there's Jamie Oliver is a celebrity chef here in the UK, and he starts giving nutritional advice, and it's like, stay in your lane, because some of the things you're saying aren't completely like helpful, but they get so much clout because they're a celebrity.
Best example is Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh,
god damn, mate.
What was she advising?
She's giving out a lot of nutritional advice. Has no idea. What was it again? She's doing something in the morning to like alkaline diet or so. And then she's having like citrus fruit along with that. And what else was there? I don't know, but it's something very, very fishy where it's just like, you just prove to the world that you have no idea. And so many scenarios, it's just like the status is equal to their credibility, which is unfortunate, because especially also with doctor titles, there's so many people taking it for granted what doctor titles actually mean to the world or to the people. Like, he's a doctor, he knows what he's talking about, but they are humans as well, and they fall for fallacies and fads as well. And it can
be really tricky to know like who or what to trust, and that's why you have to have so much just take it upon yourself to do the research a little bit and understand a bit more than just taking someone's word for it, because otherwise you could fall for something that's just completely, more than not helpful, actually detrimental. So
I don't know if that was very much helpful at all or valuable.
Hopefully.
And if I get kind of flag for that as well, what am I even doing here, and just like ranting about these kind of things and discussing
a German discussing Hitler.
Stuff that but I was negative against that, against him, right? So
you said he thought he was doing the right. No, I don't know.
He thought that he was doing the right thing, but that doesn't mean that it was, right? It turned out that it wasn't, like big time.
Now,
anyway,
why have I forgotten his name? All am I thinking of? It's the guy that clicked his fingers in Marvel with the gauntlet. What's his name? I've forgotten his name.
Thanos,
there you go.
This is fucking hell.
You know I'm terrible with names. I forget every single name.
Even Thanos.
I was actually going to ask you, when you're ill, do you do anything that you found to help?
No. Just relax, actually.
Yeah. Hard to do when we're uptight like us.
Yeah, never actually found, I don't know, glutamine or what else is there. There's like a pill, WAP enzyme is it called. This is basically, when you look at the package, just a bunch of electrolytes and vitamins.
Yeah.
Right? So I just continue taking my vitamins and stuff like that, relax, and most of the time that's actually the best thing that you can do. Yeah. Sleep lots, drink lots. Cool. Stuff like that, actually.
Yeah, I've never found anything to be magic.
No, unfortunately.
I need to remember, though, when there's people ill in my life, to do, like, increase my dose of, well, not increase, actually I bought garlic extract, and apparently garlic is actually a pretty good preventative of getting ill, and I always forget, and I end up taking it
because people don't want to be around you anymore, and they can't smell on you.
No, it's the garlic supplement doesn't smell, thankfully.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 9 grams of raw garlic cloves, which would stink so bad.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, the only thing is preventive measures, such as always washing your hands and stuff like that. And I don't know, if when I was at the supermarket, I always then clean my hands afterwards as well, because you're like grabbing stuff, grabbing handles, and I don't know, doorknobs and stuff like that, right? And after that, it's just like I clean my hands.
You're always pulling knobs. Sorry.
Yeah.
And the thing I've got now is Ada is a licker. So she licks my feet, like all my toes, she's licking them. She licks my hands, like everything. And it's like, you've just licked like your feet, your bits, everything. And now you're licking me. And I have to remember to wash my hands like all the time.
Like in the face. You know those people who are giving their dogs and cats kisses. Like, come here. Where's it again? In one movie, I don't know anymore. Whether it was Dumb and Dumber or so.
Oh, right.
I don't know. Can't remember.
I went to sleep the other day. I had a nap and I wanted to like have her with me, so I put down her blanket on the bed to sleep next to me, and as soon as I put my head down on the pillow, she just came on my back and started licking my face. God. And I couldn't calm her down for 15 minutes.
I do remember the movie. Sorry for that. There's something about Mary.
Oh, okay.
Right, her roomie, I think it is, like fully tanned with those curly hair. She has a dog at home, which always kisses her face the entire time. Come here, Poopy. I think it's actually called Poopy or so. So yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, so that's I have nothing more constructive to say.
No, let's end it here. Cool. We are both sick, so we can cut it a little bit short this time.
But yeah, thank you guys, short. And definitely get into our Facebook group. I think there's always a link in our description to every single podcast to join that, and I'll get it shared on my Instagram as well, so people are aware they can ask questions over there. And I'm excited because I think we'll get a lot of good questions, and probably I think it'll be a better format and a bit more relevant and up to date, and we'll be able to help people sooner.
Yeah,
sweet. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.